Doug Rising Show. Well, the Doug Rising Show. I'm Doug Rice. Give it to me. Give it. Come on. I can't hear it. I can't hear it. Good morning. Doug Rice. Don't drop your phones. If you got me on your phones, don't panic. It's just me. Alive and well, Doug Rice. How do you do? Energized every morning. How can you not be energized as a Negro in this country? Tell me, so then I'll know. All right, how you doing? It's 10:01. Good morning. Next to the last day of August. Here we all are. My goodness, my goodness. What a time to be a Negro in America. Say it with me. Don't just stop. Yeah, buddy. And the hits just keep coming. Let me tell you, Negroes keep running. I heard when the deranged young 20-something-year-old, after writing his manifesto, had a lot of Negroes on the go, but decided that some might live and some might not. It is an interesting indicator of brain rot. But I digress. How you doing? So as far as I know, it is Wednesday. I don't know. Is it Wednesday? Is it Tuesday? I don't know what day it is, folks. Who knows? And what I do know, it's in the morning. I just blend. Days just blend on in, and me with a watch on my hand should know it's Wednesday in this land. And I appreciate you showing up. I do indeed. I appreciate you fulfilling your need, but I heard an announcement, and so I plead, if you are looking for spiritual feed, please take yourselves over to TL Ministries, because they are doing a 10 o'clock show. And I will say this so you know. There would not be a Doug Rice show without TL Ministries. And so I recommend them over me. And if you need, please leave and see. Thanks so much for that. Brother Yacoba, Brother Teau, his brother, and Dante Fortson. Those are the three ministers that assisted in ushering me into wokeness. And you may, in fact, give them all due credit, nearly, almost, entirely due credit for this effort. And this is my second attempt at a show. They've come to know me also as Amos A. Nunn, and that show did not go. But this show will go. This show will go and go, like we all know. All right, so that's that. That's that. If you have to go to see Brother Teau and Brother Yacoba and Teau, scat, please, because they're. I'm just doing narratives. I'm just doing commentary. I mean, I'm not in the mind of veering in another kind of line. I stay in my spiritual lane, and that's how I remain sane. I'm just, I'm not sane. You guys know I'm totally crazy. All right, so you're here. Thank you. Thank you, Calvin Andrus. Thank you, David Pickett. Thank you, Sharissa Reed. We're in the thicket. I'm just joking. I'm just, I do appreciate your presence. I do. Today, we delve into an interesting topic, one that we'll pick apart. I thought the title was a work of art. Examining Slavery's Beneficial Skill Sets. Oh my goodness. What shall we talk about, folks? Dear God, what is the problem with these people? Did you hear what I just said? What we'll be doing today, just in case you couldn't read, We are going to be examining slavery's beneficial skill sets. Dear Lord, have mercy. Let me take a sip of coffee. Whew, I'm not thirsty. All right, here's we go. Well, you guys know the show. I try to find something interesting to talk about. And I do so while I scream and shout about taking that grin off your faces. And this one is not in my good graces. Here we go. DeSantis doubles down on claim that some blacks, oh Lord, who told these people that we like being called blacks? I've seen brothers and sisters out there wearing shirts blacks for Trump. I've seen brothers and sisters wearing the N-word for Trump out there. I've seen them. And this one, he loves to let that nomenclature slide off that Italian fascist mouth. I can tell you, boy. Let's continue. DeSantis doubles down on the claim that some blacks benefited from slavery. Okay. They're probably going to show that some of the folks that eventually parlayed, being a blacksmith into doing things later in life. DeSantis said on Friday, that was when this was done, in response to reporters' questions while standing in front of a nearly all-white crowd of supporters. So it was easy to let that just greasily slip out of his mouth. DeSantis, a GOP presidential candidate who is still lagging in the polls against frontrunner, former present fascist President Donald Trump, and is trying to reset his campaign. And since then, he's reset it twice. Quickly drew criticism from educators and even some in his party. Well, did he? He's built his campaign for the Republican presidential nomination on attacking what he calls the radical liberal policies of President Joe Biden, who is, of course, we know, Crime Joe Bill. What is he talking about? I don't know. Slavery wasn't a jobs program that taught beneficial skills, Hurd retorted. The son of a black father and a white mother tweeted. It was literally dehumanizing and subjugated people as property because they lacked any rights or freedom. So, DeSantis is a weirdo. DeSantis is a strange man. Listen, folks, listen. That's the take on these folks. They want us to be grateful. I need you to understand that. Not hateful. They want us to show some sort of gratitude for their racist attitude applied to Negroes throughout the years, encroaching on our deathly fears. These folks are ripe with indignation in expectation of what we should feel as a Negro nation. It's amazing. But it's a topic of discussion. It's what they're talking about. But it's interesting they try to apply this to so many people, because here we have the benefited from slavery. Critics say some of the state's examples were never even slaves. The battle over Florida's new African American history standards grows more heated, and there we have Booker T. Washington as an example among historic figures who learned skills as slaves that served them later in life. That is what they have said. The Florida Department of Education faced angry reaction from across the nation this week to new African American history standards, suggesting that some slaves benefited from skills they learned while enslaved. Responding to mounting criticism, the department issued a statement Thursday offering 16 examples of historic figures it said fit that description. They developed highly specialized abilities that helped them later in life is factual and well documented. This is what the Department of Florida's Education said. Asked for more information on that day, Florida's Department of Education cited as references The Colored Patriots of the American Revolution, an 1895 book by William Cooper Nell, and the Encyclopedia of African American History, 1619 to 1895, a 2006 book edited by Paul of All the People, Finkelman. I know Mr. Finkelman would love to tell our story. Alex Lanfranconi. Who are these people? The spokesman for the department said experts stand behind their examples. Francis Presley Rice, no relation, a co-founder of the Yoakum African American History Association and chairperson of the National Black Republican Association, provided the information to the department. But other sources offer conflicting descriptions of the 16 historic figures, and critics came forward to attack the department's claims. Among the problems, historic sources show several of the 16 individuals were never even slaves. Well, I'll be a monkey's uncle. No, I won't. My goodness. What's going on there? You give up 16 examples of slaves that made it because slavery was so good to them, and a portion of that, those individuals weren't even slaves to begin with. So that begs the question: the skills were there, or were they already? This is a quandary. Now we've got some other ideas from a sister, Representative Lakeisha Myers. As you can see, proud Negro female. I love that look. Very nice. No, Governor DeSantis, slavery did not benefit Black people. Milwaukee Courier weekly newspaper just a few days ago. In this week's rampant retelling of revisionist history, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis applauded new education curriculum that teaches Florida students that enslaved Blacks developed skills which in some instances could be applied for the personal benefit of those said Blacks. Okay, this erratic, ignorant, and dismissive portrayal glosses over the fact that prior to enslavement, Africans lived in thriving communities and were already skilled. The institution of chattel slavery did nothing to benefit the enslaved. The only beneficiaries were plantation owners and the global economy that was fueled by the forced labor of the enslaved. And in reading The Half Has Never Been Told, Slavery and the Making of American Capitalism, which is a book I've recommended in the past, author Baptiste brilliantly paints a portrait of the economic side of American slavery, the integrating historical anecdotes, quantitative records, and primary sources as a point of reference. Baptiste explores the motives of manipulation of slavery in the American South and traces its patterns and practice and production protocols throughout the antebellum years through the Civil War. With a mixture of states' rights rhetoric and the northern industrial powerhouses of New York and Philadelphia as a critical backdrop, Baptiste weaves purposefully and intentionally a tale of economic competition by any means necessary. And so what do we learn? We see that there is an intersection between slavery and how it benefited the country, how it benefited the world, how enslavement in this country created wealth throughout the globe. And so when we talk about, did Negroes benefit? I don't understand. What do you mean? We benefited with skills that we already had? How deep do we go into this? Well, let's take a little closer look here, folks. Analysis. Note to Florida and DeSantis, enslaved Africans were already skilled. Now, hopefully I didn't ever want to come up against anything that looks like that, but let's just move on. They're probably going to show that some of the folks that eventually parlayed, being a blacksmith into doing things later in life. Again, this is what DeSantis said. But here's a simple historical fact. Africans already were skilled before they were enslaved. In many cases, enslavers sought and purchased people coming from Specific African societies based on skills common in those societies. What? Decades of research. Slave ship manifests, plantation ledgers, newspaper articles, letters, journals, archaeological digs by the dozens of scholars support this, much compiled in a book I will recommend. African Founders, How Enslaved People Expanded American Freedom. Pulitzer Prize winning David Hackett Fisher seems to bring us that gem. And so, as we delve into this, folks, examining slavery's beneficial skill sets, it seems that the skills were already set and the benefits did not come to us. The benefits seem to have benefited the world while we were in chains. And what are we talking about? We're talking about skills, right, guys? I mean, we're talking about skills. The skills that they say they gave us that we supposedly had before we got here, is they sought out skilled slaves, as is trackable, traceable, and a fact established here with receipts. But let's figure something out. What kind of work were American slaves put to besides field work and housework? You see, folks, here's where the rubber meets the road, because what they try to portend about the enslaved is that we did is pick goddamned cotton. No. How do you don't have to teach a person to be very careful while they pick cotton, because as I understand, there are thorns on the cotton. I don't know. Anyway, here we go. What kind of work were American slaves put to besides field work and housework? I mean, you teach me to clean the toilet, clean up your shit after you throw up your kids, sweep off the porch, fetch you some goddamn tea. Don't you play with me. I'm sorry. By the measure of absolute numbers, most slaves were agriculture workers. However, a good proportion were put to manual labor, pick and shovel tasks. There we have photos. We have the receipts. Others were used as stevedores, dock workers, and teamsters, loading and unloading vessels and wagons. Well, I'm not saying that's skilled, but you better be a little bit smart to watch yourself, right? Okay. Black slaves were used to build railroads. Well, I'll be dadgum, look at that. Isn't that just look cozy? Don't you feel the warm and fuzzies coming from that? Do you see and feel the skill that we absorbed in swinging that goddamned hammer? Let me not stammer. Slaves were used to build roads. As a hammermen, smiths, and farriers. Smaller number were craftsmen, wood workers, furniture makers, blacksmiths, devils, wheelwrights, brickmakers, and masons, etc. Almost any craft where added muscle was appropriate to the task. There was a tedium involved, laundry, ironic. Okay, so let me just say this as I put that up there. Is that another thing that we learned? What skill is this? And how was this earned? I'll leave that there for your perusal. As you can see, this was their slaves' usual. We'll come from that because that'll just piss me off. So, the verdict is close to being in. And this is a reflection on all of their kin. And I think we're going to have to go over it again, examining beneficial skill sets. I tend to wonder, were there any grateful slaves before there were grateful Negroes? I mean, the ones that we see around now, who show that they love this system, which systematically, just somehow emphatically puts Negroes down and almost portray us in being clowns. But before we were Negroes, we were slaves. And I don't know, did some of them think their lives were saved? The fallacy of good slave owners. Yes, there is a rumor that there were some good massas out there. I don't know, though. Let's clear the air. America is a great country, therefore needed a great history. No, the one that existed wouldn't do. Christopher Columbus didn't discover America. It was already inhabited when he landed. Not only had the Indians been there long enough to have been considered Native Americans, but Africans had visited American shores multiple times, as indicated by Christopher Columbus and others. The biggest stain on the legacy of America is its own original sin, slavery. The early presidents of the United States, 12 enslaved people during their lifetime, 8 while they served as president. Thomas Jefferson famously wrote that all men were created equally, while having owned over 600 enslaved people over his lifetime and taking one for his long-term mistress at the age of 14. Even if you consider that a girl of that era might be regarded as a woman and not a child, someone you own cannot consent. The potential penalty for saying no is too high, being sold away or even death. There's only one word to describe a master taking a slave for a sexual relationship, which is rape. Most of the revered founding fathers were enslavers. John Adams, Alexander Hamilton, Thomas Paine, and others were not. 14 of the 21 white men generally considered the founding fathers enslaved people, including Ben Franklin, John Hancock, Thomas Jefferson, Patrick Henry, and George Washington. Henry said, "Give me liberty or give me death," while he simultaneously deprived slaves of theirs. He couldn't even justify his position, which he admitted in a letter to John Aslop of the Society of Friends, Quakers. He shrugged off his ownership of slaves as a matter of goddamned convenience. Oh, I'm sorry, did I include that? Would anyone believe that I am master of slaves by my own purchase? I am drawn along by the general inconvenience of living without them. I cannot justify it, however culpable my conduct, and this coming from the mouth of the man who said, "Give me liberty or give me death." Can you believe this? Given the fact that almost all of our early leaders held enslaved people captive, they also bought and sold them. The men who the country needed to build up as heroes had their flaws minimized or erased. The whole institution of slavery and how it was practiced in America was literally whitewashed, made to seem not as bad as it was. Along with the diminishing, the heinous nature of slavery, the myth of the good slave owner was created and deemed applicable to almost all who owned them. That myth was born of necessity, as the truth would not do. Well, I am not going to continue that. I think I'll give that to you. So here we have a very broken, fragmented observation within this racist, hate-filled nation, filled with the laziest individuals who claim such a pompous, pious position. And I for one, am just not of that volition. I have no intent. I will not relent. I will not. They'll have to rent these words out of my mouth. I mean, listen, folks. You know, a lot's been hidden. You know, a lot's been masked. An enormous and tremendous task. And, you know, we talk about the men who owned slaves. We talk about, you know how the history But listen, they don't leave any mystery to this, and we don't want to miss this at all. Hello there, miss. The massive overlooked role of female slave owners. Well, there's a tale to be told. It's estimated that 40% of slave owners may have been white women. Let me stop there just for a minute. Listen, I posted something that showed you the stats of what white women could get away with in their treatment of slaves. And I know it ended up in a bunch of your saves. I put it everywhere: Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, ad hoc. I put it every place I could. And if you haven't seen it, well, by God, you should. What they were permitted to do to Negro children would chill your very soul, would harden your heart beyond mending. You would no longer do any pretending. You would sound off in the face of every last one of them to their own disgrace. Well, let's see what we're talking about in the first place. Most Americans know that George Washington owned and enslaved people. Hey, pick up where we left off, at his Mount Vernon home. But fewer probably know that it was his wife, Martha, who dramatically increased the enslaved population there. When they wed in 1759, George may have owned around 18 people. Martha, one of the richest women in Virginia, owned 84. Now, before I say more, what a picture into the lives of these early supposed founders. I can tell you this, man. That's a hell of a stat. I mean, whoa, where's she afford all that? 84? 84? You own 84 people, miss? I'd love to see that list. The number of people Martha Washington owned is unusual, damn skippy. But the fact that she owned them is not. Stephanie Jones Rogers, a history professor at the University of California, Berkeley, is compiling data on just how many white women owned slaves in the United States. And in the parts of the 1850 and 1860 census data she's studied so far, white women, as we opened up with, make up about 40% of slave owners. Slave-holding parents typically gave their daughters more enslaved people than land. Oh, dear God, let me say that again. Slave-holding parents typically gave their daughters more enslaved people than land. They were her property. White women as slave owners in the American South came out February 2019. What this means is that their very identities as white women are tied into the actual or possible ownership of other goddamned people. Let me come off this steeple. Listen, folks, do you know why daughters of the Confederacy exist? Do you know why? Folks like that make my list. I mean, are you paying attention, or should I mention, a little bit of Planned Parenthood? I mean, I would if I could. I mean, the benefits of slavery. Well, let me tell you a skill set that I find unsavory. The skill set of survival. That's a learned skill set, a painful lesson, and one that toward the end we'll be addressing. But now let's just move on a little bit. So we've broken it down like a fraction. We've at least gotten us some mental action, right? We're thinking, you guys talking amongst yourselves. Remember, please, if you like what we are doing, for goodness sake, please give us your support. That's right. Give us your support. We'll give you some nice PDFs in return. Best place to give is our Cash App, $, Doug Wright Show. If you like the way this show flows, The only way that I'm going to know really is, of course, in the likes and the subscribes and the shares and the comments. But hey, you could pair that with a few dollars. I'm just saying, and I'm not playing, we could sure use the help. I want to do this every day if I can help it, and I think I can. But I also, I'll need your support. Just saying it like that. Just need your support. So we'll stop there for that plug, and let's continue on. Let's see what else we got. Now, we've covered some information, we've talked about good slave owners, right? We've talked about what, that's probably stupid, right? There's no such thing, we've talked about women, their role in slavery. We talked about all of these things. But what did slavery do to benefit white folks? I don't know. A dual emancipation. How Black freedom benefited poor whites. Now, when we call them whites, I hope that they don't mind that. They call us blacks. And, So here we go. This is a nice little picture, nice little scene. Did you pause for this, guys? You know what I mean? Huh? What are we looking at here? Look, this didn't happen, huh? Is this what we're saying? Huh? Gaze upon that. You don't think, what? You just want to erase that? That's 100 years before I was born. Solutions to the labor question in the South, 1865. Where are they? Mid-Manhattan Picture Collection. Dear God, that's where you can go to look at this. They put this horror on display, and they want you to think it's okay. Dear God, why don't they take it all the fuck away? I'm sorry, I drift. Recently, scholars have come to the question, emancipation is the proper terminology, for describing the end of American slavery, preferred instead to discuss the process of emancipation. A much more nuanced type of freedom. Ooh, I like that. As we continue to build upon these theories, I contend that Black emancipation needs to be recognized for freeing the South's poor whites in several tangible ways. Okay, here we go. When judged comparatively with other nations' emancipatory histories, America's experience is unique. While African Americans were the only freed slaves to be granted political rights so soon after emancipation, those rights were limited for a people without land, wealth, or job prospects. Most freed slaves left their former homes with little more than the clothes on their backs. Eventually, Black men were ostensibly awarded the rights of citizenship, but even that was inconsequential if they were jobless and their families were suffering from hunger and want. Newly granted civil rights sometimes rang hollow to people who were left unprotected to suffer the violence of vigilante groups like the Ku Klux Klan. Soon neutralized 14th and 15th Amendments could not help almost 4 million Americans whose first concern was finding a way to earn a living wage and gain self-sufficiency. During early Reconstruction, while many former slaves questioned the actual socioeconomic benefits of their emancipation, poor whites experienced a time of mostly positive change. Before the Civil War, poor whites had functioned as social pariahs in the Deep South because they had no real place or stake in the slave system, and thus actually stood to threaten it. Slavery had driven the wages of Southern white laborers well below those of their Northern counterparts. And even more detrimentally, it decreased the demand for white farmers, tenants, day laborers, and even mechanics, creating a large underclass of white people who were unable to find consistent work or earn a living wage. As one laborer from Georgia complained, the slaveholders could get the slave for almost nothing, and the poor young white men like myself could not get a job. And occasionally this rampant poverty led to well-known psychological and social ills, from depression, fatalism, apathy to alcoholism, domestic violence, and criminal activity. Does that not sound a bit familiar? Does that not sound a bit familiar? What are you saying? Are you saying that you took their goddamn jobs? What are you saying? They couldn't work? They weren't as worthy of being employed as owning a Negro. Is that what you're saying? And the effects of these shiftless, lazy individuals seem to mirror the effects that we find in the ghettos created by the descendants of these same rancid-ass, lazy individuals. That's right. I'm in it. They made particularly inviting targets for a Southern legal system dominated by slaveholders, who generally incarcerated them for behavior, nonviolent crimes like trading, drinking, and other social interactions with slaves and free blacks. On the eve of secession, slaveholders were still jailing poor whites for small amounts of debt, publicly whipping thieves, and auctioning off debtors and criminals for their labor to the highest bidder. Completely removed from many of the privileges of whiteness, poor whites were essentially masterless men and women in an increasingly hierarchical world held together by mastery. And this fact deeply troubled the region's slaveholders. Now, folks, we know where they're going. We know where this is leading. The freeing of blacks, the devaluing of the property that was once owned, now free to roam. And now poor whites would be lifted from that place put upon them by the ownership of slaves by their kin. All right, let me bring it in. So what were the benefits of slavery? I mean, were there any, who benefited? Who benefited from the release? Who benefited from the holding? Who benefited? Who did blacks benefit? I don't know. Walter says, John Hubbard, a Republican member of the Arkansas House of Representatives, has a book titled Letters to the Editor, Confessions of a Frustrated Conservative. Among its statements for which Hubbard has been criticized and disavowed by the public party is the institution of slavery that the black race has long believed to be an abomination upon its people may actually have been a blessing in disguise. The blacks who could endure those conditions and circumstances would someday be rewarded with citizenship in the greatest nation ever established on the face of the goddamned earth. Oh, really? So this is where this began. This is where it all started before Ron DeSantis, before Donald Trump. This October 24th, 2012 at midnight, a snake's hour. This was spoken out loud in front of a more likely all-white crowd. In Arkansas, yeah, probably. So, slavery's beneficial skill set starts with a lecture. The notion that black people should somehow be grateful to be rewarded with citizenry for, enduring the horrors of being enslaved by white people. That's who enslaved them. Self-proclaimed white people All different types of tribes got together and they called themselves white people. I'm just saying, that's what they said. So the answer in examining slavery's beneficial skill sets is hell to the goddamn no. We didn't benefit from being enslaved by these lazy, rancid-ass individuals of that day. And we're kind of sick of hearing what their fucking offspring has to say. No, there's nothing to be grateful for. There's nothing to be grateful for. Listen, in fact, I dare say there's a little bit resentment that we can hold if we so chose. Of course, that's not healthy. And nobody knows like me. That is a fact. But listen, don't tell us to be grateful for enduring your ancestors. I mean, you know, don't suggest it. Don't open your loose, rancid ass, filthy fucking mouths to tell us that we benefited from, I don't know, the lynchings, the burnings alive, the castrations. And it's even happening today, finding people, black people, brothers and sisters, Negroes, the holy royal family of God Almighty, hung in a goddamn tree while they claim suicide is the culprit of that death. You see, listen, folks, the answer is real simple. Let me give you my verdict. I'll tell you what we learned. Remember where you heard it. Yeah, there's some skills that we developed in being enslaved and being enveloped by your presence. And I can tell you, you know, they've come in handy. They've kept us alive. You know, I mean, this again. Skill sets involving survival are hard pressed and hard learned. You know, you think about the brother that worked in the presence of these beings as they spoke only about how they see Negroes to them, you and me. Just flatten that N-word around while they're getting served, you know, and we act like we don't hear. This was just earlier, just a few years. Bell hops. You know, train hops. I mean, you think about it. The merge into their society came at the cost of us having to endure the piles of putrid manure pouring out of their mouths. And all we could do was sit there while they espoused their hatred of Negroes. And certainly time has moved on and there aren't too many of us that don't get along, but look, it's those few that are preparing to do horrible things to me and you that most concern me. And today, while we examine slavery's beneficial skill sets, the only sets that I seem to get is that we survive. We collectively survive individually as a nation. And listen, it's not going to be easy because their plot is just thick and greasy. It's coming at us in large order. Yeah, so here they are. Slavery's beneficial skill sets. I hope I didn't detract from the information. I hope everybody got something from this. The short answer is we don't owe them a goddamn thing, and be very quick to remind them of that if they dare open their mouths in your Negro direction with that funky ass suggestion. All right, I'm good. All right. Thanks so much for showing up, folks. I got no more sayings or jokes. I'm done. I gotta run. Because, you know, I got stuff to do. I don't know. Okay, you guys just have a wonderful day. I do appreciate your time. And please do me a favor. Like, subscribe, share, the notification bell. I'm sure it's right there. Again, I've already been told that you don't get told by the notification bell. So it's okay. They can go to hell. I don't care. But It's 9:45. Thank you. You guys know how to support us. You know my sponsors, Twidwear, twidwear.com. That's what I do. He's got some beautiful apparel. And you should take a look at it too. He's also got skin care. So there's Twid gear. It's Twid gear. It's Twidwear. It's everywhere. I love it. Anyway, all right. Okay, you guys, it's Wednesday, hump day. You guys have yourself a good day, and I am going to go away. All right, you have a good one. Bye-bye. Hey! Jesus. Gosh, Detrina, I don't know. Is Detrina here today? I don't know. Somebody needs to, like, make a note. I forget every day. I've got to send you on your way and just listen for a moment about what I'm going to say. I've kept off Trump for a few days because, you know, we kind of familiar with his ways. It's not really Trump I'm worried about. It's more or less those who support him, I doubt. And I doubt that they'll be able to control themselves for much longer because his grip on their psyche grows ever stronger. And as they resonate and vibrate in your Negro direction, I need you to just do this for your protection. If you got to be out there up in their spaces, get that goddamn grin off your faces. You may go now.